In the early morning hours of January 8, 2006, Colin Fortney, a student from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, stumbled into Gunderson Lutheran Medical Center in La Crosse, Wisconsin. He was soaking wet, freezing, and disoriented, with no clear explanation of what had happened to him. All he could recall was dancing at a bar in downtown La Crosse, and the next thing he knew, he was struggling to stay afloat in the icy waters of the Mississippi River. After a miraculous escape, Fortney managed to find a concrete slab to cling to, pulled himself ashore, and made his way to the hospital. The strange circumstances of Fortney's experience caught the attention of retired New York City police detectives Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte. They had been investigating a series of drownings that they believed to be part of a larger conspiracy, which they referred to as the Smiley Face murder theory. This theory suggests that the deaths of several young men, typically college-aged and often involving alcohol, were not accidents, but rather the result of foul play, possibly by a coordinated group of killers. Fortney's case was especially notable because, unlike other victims, he survived. Over the years, at least 5 young men had been found dead under similar circumstances in La Crosse, Wisconsin, between 1998 and 2006. These men, like Colin, had gone missing after a night out, only to be discovered later in the Mississippi River. The local authorities had consistently ruled these cases as accidents, attributing the drownings to excessive drinking and unfortunate mishaps. However, the frequency of these incidents and the eerie similarities between them raised suspicions among investigators like Gannon and Duarte, who were already looking into similar deaths across the United States. The Smiley Face murder theory gained its name from the recurring appearance of smiley face graffiti found near some of the locations where bodies were discovered. Gannon and Duarte believed that this symbol was left behind as a calling card by the perpetrators. However, not all cases had the graffiti, leading to debates about whether it was merely a coincidence or a sign of a larger organized operation. One of the most infamous cases in La Crosse was the death of Luke Homan, a senior at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, who was also a standout athlete on the university's basketball team. On September 29, 2006, Homan went out with friends to celebrate Oktoberfest, a popular festival in La Crosse. He was last seen at a bar called The Vibe on 3rd Street, where witnesses reported seeing him around 2:30 a.m. After that, Luke vanished. For days, his family and friends searched for him, but there was no sign of Luke. On October 2, 2006, his body was found in the Mississippi River, not far from where several other young men had been discovered. Like in the other cases, Luke's death was ruled an accidental drowning due to alcohol. His blood alcohol content, BAC, was high, around 0.33, which led authorities to conclude that he had fallen into the river while intoxicated. However, there were troubling details about Luke's death that raised more questions than answers. An autopsy revealed that Luke had bruises on his forehead, biceps, and knuckles, as well as ligature marks on his wrists. These injuries suggested that Luke may have been in a struggle before his death. Additionally, there were traces of GHB gamma hydroxybutyrate, a date rape drug, found in his system, though the levels were not high enough to definitively say he had been drugged. The combination of these factors, injuries consistent with a struggle, potential drugging, and the high BAC, led Gannon and Duarte to believe that Luke Homan's death was not a simple accident. Luke Homan's case was not unique. In fact, it was part of a disturbing pattern of deaths in La Crosse that had occurred over the previous decade. The first known case was that of 28-year-old Charles Blotz, who disappeared in 1997 during Oktoberfest. Like Luke, Charles had been out drinking at bars on 3rd Street before he went missing. His body was found 5 days later, floating in the Mississippi River. The next victim was Nathan Kapfer, a 20-year-old student who vanished in 1998. Nathan had been cited for underage drinking at a bar on 3rd Street before disappearing. His belongings, including his hat and wallet, were later found near Riverside Park, close to where his body was eventually discovered in the river. In 1999, another 20-year-old student, Jeffrey Giese, disappeared under similar circumstances. He had been out at a bar talking to friends when he vanished. His body was found in the river more than a month later, with a blood alcohol level of 0.42, more than 5 times the legal limit for driving. The string of deaths continued in 2004 with the case of Jared Dion, a wrestler and student at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. Like the others, Jared had been out drinking at bars on 3rd Street before he went missing. His body was found in the same general area where Luke Homans would be discovered 2 years later. The similarities between these cases were hard to ignore. All the victims were young, white, athletic men who had been out drinking at bars along 3rd Street. They were all found in the Mississippi River, and most of them had blood alcohol levels that suggested heavy drinking. While the authorities insisted that these deaths were accidental, Gannon and Duarte believed there was something far more sinister at play. When Colin Fortney survived his brush with death in 2006, it gave Gannon and Duarte a glimmer of hope. They had long argued that the key to proving the Smiley Face murder theory would be finding a survivor, someone who could provide information about what had happened to these young men before they ended up in the river. Could Fortney be that person? Unfortunately, Fortney's memory of the night was hazy. He remembered leaving the bar around closing time, but after that, everything was a blur. He woke up in the river struggling to stay alive. His blood alcohol content was much lower than the other victims, around 0.04 when he arrived at the hospital. This led his family to believe that he had been drugged, although toxicology tests showed no signs of GHB or other date-rape drugs in his system. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the Fortney family and investigators remained skeptical of the official explanation. Colin's mother pointed out that her son's blood alcohol level was too low to cause such extreme memory loss. She also noted that Colin had lost his shoes and jacket, which were never recovered, leading her to believe that someone had tried to harm him. The La Crosse Police Department, however, concluded that Colin had likely fallen into the river by accident, dismissing the possibility of foul play. This was the same conclusion they had reached in the previous cases, despite the suspicious circumstances surrounding each death. The Smiley Face murder theory remains controversial to this day. Gannon and Duarte have spent years investigating these cases, traveling across the country to examine similar incidents. They believe that a group of killers may be targeting young men, possibly using drugs like GHB to incapacitate their victims before dumping them into rivers. The smiley face graffiti found near some of the scenes adds a chilling element to their theory, though not every case has this symbol. While local law enforcement agencies have largely dismissed the theory, Gannon and Duarte continue to push for further investigation. They argue that the similarities between the cases are too striking to ignore, and that the evidence points to something far more sinister than a series of tragic accidents. Despite the skepticism surrounding the smiley face murder theory, the persistence of Gannon and Duarte has drawn attention to potential flaws in the official investigations. Over the years, advances in forensic science and data analysis have led some experts to reconsider the possibility of a pattern among these deaths. Some advocates argue that even if there is no single group of killers, there could be a hidden element of predation in play, such as opportunistic attackers or unreported assaults that culminate in these tragic drownings. Without further investigation or survivors like Fortney stepping forward with more detailed memories, however, the full truth may remain elusive. In recent years, the families of the victims have continued to push for the reopening of cold cases and independent investigations. They've also called for more comprehensive studies on alcohol-related drownings, specifically in the context of young college-aged men. Advocacy groups have started petitioning for wider safety measures in college towns with similar patterns, hoping to prevent future tragedies. As awareness grows and new evidence surfaces, the question remains: how many of these drownings could have been prevented, and how close are investigators to unraveling the truth behind these unsettling deaths? Public pressure has also mounted for local law enforcement agencies to take a fresh look at these cases, with some calling for the involvement of federal authorities to examine the potential links between drownings in different cities. The lingering doubts and unanswered questions have fueled documentaries, podcasts, and investigative reports, keeping the Smiley Face murder theory alive in the public consciousness. As families, investigators, and advocates continue their search for justice, the possibility of uncovering new evidence remains a glimmer of hope. Until then, the mysterious drownings in La Crosse and other cities serve as a haunting reminder of the lives lost and the questions that still hang in the air.